Welcome, everyone. My name is Joyce Kofi. We are excited to have all of you on this session of the Long Night of Research, this 2025 edition. Our session will be looking at the value of intersectoral partnerships that IFRC and Northumbria University have been fostering for a while. And particularly today, we want to be talking around gathering the evidence to advance volunteer development. But before we get into the meeting, I wanted us to go through a few housekeeping rules. So we would like to remind you that during the session, on your names, it will be grateful if you can update your name on the Zoom. You can go and rename your name and put your organization. If you look at my example, it says Joyce Kofi IFRC. If you could do that, that would be very good. Also, kindly keep your mics mute. If you're not speaking, please keep your mics muted. And if possible, we would like for you to keep on your video, but if you have low bandwidth connectivity, it's okay to switch it off. If you have questions to the speakers, ideally, please write it in the chat, or you can also raise your hand feature. If you have the raise your hand feature, we will see your hand and then we'll be able to respond to your raised hand. If you have IT questions, ask that question in the chat. We have administrators who will be able to help. And also just to mention that this session is being recorded. And so if you remain in this session, it means you agree to the recording. And also we would like to mention that participants should not take pictures of screen of other participants without permission. Yeah, and so also we wanted to talk to you about the AI generated captions and translations. So if you go on the bottom of your page, you will see the icon that says show captions. We have also put in the chat, how to do this AI generated captions. So you choose the language, right? You choose the language that you want your captions to be in. And also there's the button that says translation. So in the translation also, you can choose the language that you want your translation to be in. So you will hear a voice in the translation, and then the captions, you have the text that comes in the language that you want. So for today, it will be myself. My name is Joyce Kofi. I am Senior Officer Volunteering Development based at the IFRC in Geneva. And my colleague, Bianca, could you introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Bianca Fadel. I am a research fellow based at Northumbria University in the UK. Very happy to be here with you today.
Thank you, Bianca. So what we would like to ask is that if you'd also participants introduce yourselves in the chat, that would be great. We will be delighted, so that we'll know exactly which organization, which national society you are coming from. So kindly tell us who you are and where you are coming from, which organization you are in. Thank you very much. Over to you, Bianca.
Thank you very much, Joyce, for the introduction, and we will be looking forward to also having your personal introductions here in the chat as we start this session today. And we will start with a bit of a quiz here to get your take on some of the questions that we will be working on and discussing in this session today. It's an interactive session, so we want to start by actually asking you to participate great and to help us make this session as useful as possible. So in order for us to get into this topic of how evidence can inform volunteer development, and I know many of you here in this room are practitioners working in this space in many different areas of the world, we have one question for you to start here. So what do you think is the percentage of humanitarian research that is published in academic journals that is effectively cited in policy documents by humanitarian organizations or operational documents? So what do you think is this percentage of the humanitarian research that is published in academic journals that effectively gets into the policy report? So if you can use the chat to say if you think it's like less than 5%, around 25%, B, C, nearly 50%, or D, over 75%. But just a quick question. I can see some answers already popping here into the chat. Quite a few people going for less than 5%, some 25%. So we are in the lower end of this percentage scale. Let's give it another 10 seconds if anybody else wants to try to answer this quiz question. And the point here is precisely to try to understand the connections, right? So effectively, I can see some more answers coming around 25%. So the answer is A. So most of the answers here in the chat are reflecting the correct answer, because the connection is actually very low between the academic research that is published in this space and the effective policy citation, or how this is used by humanitarian and development practitioners. So this is what a very recent study has found, and we think it's an important context to our conversation today. So another quick question, and then we'll get on to show you some of the information that we have planned for this session. So according to another recent study, what do you think is one of the top barriers that policymakers face in using academic research in humanitarian response? So again, we have 4 options here. Option A, do you think it's because of lack of internet access? Option B, do you think it's because research is too theoretical or inaccessible? Or option C, too little funding for research? Or final option D, there is no interest in evidence-based practice. So if you can use the chat again, I can see some answers coming here now. Option D, option B. So what do you think is this like top barrier for policymakers to use the information? We're ranging between B, research being too theoretical or inaccessible, some people raising the issue of funding, or lack of interest in evidence-based practice. Again, let's give it another 10 seconds and see if anybody else wants to engage in this interactive quiz. Another C, funding issues there. So effectively, these could all be barriers, right? But the main one that has been identified in this recent study is exactly what most of you answered in the chat about the lack of language that is less theoretical and more accessible. So research is still being seen as too theoretical or inaccessible to policy audiences. And I think this is, again, a really important part of the context of what we wanted to bring to you in this session today. So with this interactive question setting a little bit the scene, thank you all for engaging with us. I will pass it on back to Joyce so we can start talking about this collaboration and what value it's adding to the type of work that we're all doing.
Thank you, Bianca, and thank you everyone for responding to the quiz questions. You are not too far from, the reality, the right answer. For over a decade now, we have been actually collaborating with the Northumbria University. It's quite some time now that we've been working with Northumbria University, but what we have actually been focusing on are mainly these 3 key pillars that has actually seen our, intersectoral partnership the pillars have been around the research and evidence, where we generate accessible research, the evidence and insights to improve understanding of critical issues faced by volunteers. Research has really helped us to generate so much evidence, where we have been able to generate documents or tools that really support our work with volunteers. The second pillar has been around advocacy and communication. So these collaborations and the work that we have been doing with the university has really improved, the recognition and awareness of the distinct issues faced by volunteers. We all have seen, from the quiz, right, that research has been or can support policy making. So what we have been working around advocacy, on tools is really improving this kind of recognition and awareness of the issues faced by volunteers, very particular issues faced by volunteers. The third pillar that we have, worked around also falls under knowledge and learning, where we have created learning opportunities and resources that support the improvements to policies and practices that affect volunteers. And one of the areas that we have worked on for a while now is mainly around crisis, the safety, security, well-being of volunteers has been one of the areas where the collaboration has really taken root and has gone further. And it's really yielding very good results in tools and ways of supporting volunteers who are really on the front lines. Thank you very much, Bianca.
Thank you very much, Joyce. And this session will be really about understanding some examples of what Joyce has just explained about how we have been trying to make this collaboration generate resources that are useful, both from the point of view of advancing the academic research, but also for policymakers, for practitioners, and especially within the movement, for everyone, volunteers and staff, to have access to information that is useful and that can help, again, advance the topic of volunteer development in the different areas in which you are all working, and particularly the context of response to crises and emergencies that Joyce also emphasized, which has been at the core of our collaboration. So please do continue to introduce yourselves in the chat. We can see we have many people joining from different contexts, which is amazing. And this is just to show you some of the examples that we will be briefly touching upon in the next block of this presentation. And we hope to leave enough time here for our discussion so that you can also share examples from your own work. So if I start by going a bit chronologically here, the Global Review on Volunteering was this flagship report that I'm sure many of you have seen or even contributed to, that was launched in 2015. So we're talking about 10 years ago already. And this has been a flagship report because it has raised issues in relation to volunteer development in ways that again highlight the importance of these intersectoral partnerships. So there was a very systematic approach to collecting data from almost 600 volunteer managers, delegates, and volunteers themselves from all around the world and the countries in which the movement is present. And this report is a critical analysis of the challenges that can exist in the promotion and the type of support in the context of local and global changes, for example, climate change, inequalities, and the various issues that volunteers are facing worldwide. During this session, we're going to be sharing the links that you can see here in the slide in the chat. Thank you, Joyce, for sharing it with everyone. These are all resources that are accessible, most of them in more than one language, so not only in English, and you can access it online, but also these slides will be made available afterwards in the RC3 platform so that you can also have access to the full slide deck later on. So, following the global review on volunteering, one of the main issues that has been identified was precisely the challenges of volunteers who are responding to crises, conflicts, and emergencies around the world. Again, we know this is an issue that has been happening for many more decades, but there has been this lack of awareness of the experiences of volunteers themselves. How can we actually understand what volunteers are going through and respond to that? So we have then launched the Volunteering in Conflicts and Emergencies, VICE for short, as an initiative in collaboration with the Swedish Red Cross and liaising with the whole movement, particularly the IFRC, the ICRC, and national societies that have been involved in listening studies. So basically, the main question that was asked at the start of these listening studies, back at the start of the initiative itself, was, what is it like to be a volunteer in your context? So this was a main question, an open question that was the key opening of a conversation with volunteers in 6 countries: Afghanistan, Honduras, Myanmar, South Sudan, Sudan, and Ukraine. And this has allowed us to gather some very rich information for the first time, highlighting the challenges that volunteers who are responding themselves to the crises and emergencies around the world, but that sometimes, and most of the times, as we know, are also facing the challenges themselves in their own lives, in their families, or in their friends. So basically understanding how all of those elements are connected and what can be done to identify ways of responding to these challenges. So this initiative has involved, again, very innovative methodologies, pop-up labs, trying to explore issues, for example, of volunteer insurance and safety nets. We have produced both more academic papers, but also policy engagement focused papers, shorter thematic papers that you can all access as well from the links that are now in the chat. And importantly, this has been the basis of a collaboration through the IFRC Global Volunteering Alliance technical group that has been focused on volunteering in dangerous situations. So basically, this working group, composed of members of the movement across different contexts as well, has been also trying to tackle important topics connected to the safety, security, and well-being of volunteers. So what I would highlight here as our next example of how this collaboration has been leading to concrete tools that can help and that can be accessed by everyone in the movement and beyond. So the focus of our safety, security, and well-being discussions has been in developing key standards that can help everyone working with volunteers, particularly in the context of crises and emergencies, but also more generally, to understand areas that require the attention of the staff members to support, to invest, and to promote volunteering in ways that are safe and secure and well. So basically, this has been like a combination of efforts. Like you might remember as well, in 2015, there was the International Conference resolution focused on the safety, security of humanitarian volunteers, and the background report that led to this resolution, and also the progress implementation report after the resolution. So the standards, they came also as a response to the needs identified by this process. So you can see, again, the links provided, that this is like an interactive tool. This is aimed at allowing everyone to identify key areas and where they stand as a national society or as an organization more broadly. You can see here in the slide the 13 key areas of the standards. So starting from the definition of volunteer and volunteering, that we know can also be context specific, although following some of the overarching elements that we know are applicable across many contexts, going through the idea of a code of conduct, the importance of data, information about who these volunteers are and what they are doing, risk management elements, safety procedures and protocols, monitoring the incidents, and accessing information and guidance more broadly. So this goes through all these areas, and what the standards are about, basically, they are a tool. Many of you might be familiar with other tools within the movement as well, to be able to promote the safety and security of all involved. But this is like tiered exercise. So if you access the implementation guide, again available in several languages, you can have an idea of where your organization will sit within a tiered framework, from like not having had the opportunity of exploring this yet for different reasons, sometimes lack of resources, sometimes lack of attention to the specific issues, to a level of development of this standard that would be considered ideal from the point of view of protecting volunteers. So we invite you to explore this tool. Again, this has been an interesting example of how by collaborating across sectors, we're able to bring knowledge into accessible formats that can be used by the different types of stakeholders and interest groups working with volunteers. So this is all available online. And this has also led to rethinking a little bit what is the influence that we can have into policy making, right? I know that many of you here in the call as well might be involved in developing volunteering policy documents yourselves, or have been accessing information about wider policies. So back in 2020, 2021, we have been invited by the Federation in partnership with the Spanish Red Cross to be able to analyze the existing IFRC volunteering policy at the time, and reflect on the value and the issues that were actually appreciated and those that could be improved from the perspective of different members of the movement, right? So we engaged online with just over 330 staff and volunteers from 40 different national societies. And the key for this exercise was actually to understand what could be the key elements of a revised IFRC volunteering policy to encompass the needs and the changing environment of volunteering since the last policy had been implemented. So again, this was like a collaborative example of how to engage with researchers and practitioners to improve policy, and the result that was also informed by the wider work of the IFRC in different instances and with key collaborators to actually review the volunteering policy. And as you might all be familiar with, this is now a much more comprehensive document as well that is available and guiding the key principles of volunteering across the movement. So shifting to an example of another more research-focused tool that is also available for everyone interested in exploring the themes and the topics that are being discussed more currently in relation to volunteering. We developed this source book as a reference guide in partnership with the RC3, actually, that is hosting us all here through this wonderful event today and tomorrow. And this has been an exercise to actually put together many different sources, again, different languages, and around different thematic areas that were identified as strategic, because we know that research sometimes can be a little bit scattered and difficult to find, especially when not everyone might have the same access to paywalls, for example, for accessing academic work. And we saw there in the quiz the lack of connection, again, between research that is published in academic spaces and policy-focused research. So this source book is an entry point for anyone that is interested in the topics and that might want to explore this in further depth. So you can also access the resources, and they are clearly grouped across thematic areas, trying to really bring this down to the relevance to you in your work. So again, another interesting example of this cross-sectoral ways of working. And then to conclude the set of examples, I just wanted to bring to you two other projects that are also focused on identifying the needs and the experiences of volunteers in different contexts that sometimes are sidelined in the work that we often see published about volunteering. So these are two projects that were led by Northumbria University. The first one in orange that you can see here on the screen was a project focused on understanding the experiences of refugee young volunteers who are, again, like all involved in some way or another in providing this type of support to their communities. So we know that the language about refugees oftentimes is very much focused on refugees simply as recipients of support, of aid. But this project was really trying to understand how refugees themselves are volunteering, particularly young people in Uganda, that is the majority of the refugee population in the country. And how does that happen? So what are the aspects there in relation to their own livelihoods, the challenges, the inequalities that they experience, and what are the implications for when we talk about volunteering and employment in the context of displacement? So again, another tool, an example of how research can be used to inform practice. We had a great collaboration with multiple stakeholders working in partnership with the universities in Uganda as well, who were conducting this research, the government, and the movement too. So the Ugandan Red Cross, for example, as one of the stakeholders participating in workshops and informing the findings that were gathered through this piece of work. And all the resources that are available, they are also trying to become as interactive as possible. So we have games, we have tools online that can be adapted as well to different contexts. And this was the focus of this particular piece. The second one that you can see here on the slide is a project focused on understanding the experiences of volunteers responding to the climate emergency, particularly in the context of the Delta region in India, where this piece of research took place. So how everyday volunteering happens. Sometimes it's not even called volunteering. I know that many of you might have had that a situation before as well, of people supporting each other without necessarily using the language of volunteering. So how this work happens and how is it organized? And this was the focus of understanding volunteering in response to the consequences of the climate emergency. Again, involving stakeholders from the movement and beyond to try and focus on the experiences that volunteers are facing around the world. So these are examples of the type of research that we have been conducting here at Northumbria University as part of what we call a peak of research excellence focused on volunteering, humanitarian crisis and development. And the collaboration is key. You might have noticed that across all the projects that we have shared here today, we're always trying to work collaboratively to break these silos and to build bridges between sectors and between organizations to understand the experiences of volunteers around the world and how to improve the experiences and the ways that they can be supported. So on that note, I'll pass it on to Joyce to talk a little bit about the ongoing efforts of our online community of practice.
Thank you, Bianca. So just to say that continuing our collaboration on what we do with academic, we last year set up what we call the community of practice, mainly on volunteering development. But we do have subgroups, and one of the subgroups is volunteer safety, security, and well-being. And because of our collaboration with the Northumbria University, with the VICE, which is the Volunteering in Complex and Emergency Situations, we work collaboratively, particularly on this subgroup on the safety and security of well-being of volunteers. So this online space is barely a year, but it's a growing online space where there's sharing of challenges, there's useful tools. We have webinars. I think every other month we have webinars where we actually dissect the 13 standards because it needs to be disseminated and understood. National societies also come with best practices and challenges and share what they are doing and co-create. Basically it's an approach, it's a community of practice where we do a co-creation and collaboration amongst all kinds of people where we see how we can better support volunteers, right? Because Northumbria has this VICE collaboration with the Swedish Red Cross, and also part of the Volunteering Alliance, they are the ones that we co-facilitate this particular community of practice with. It's a very interesting community of practice. We have 636 members, and it's still growing. And we would like to invite anyone here to join. We have shared how to join. Oh, thank you, Bianca. You already put it there. And it's also interesting to see that when you come there, it's not basically just about what we are doing with the standards, but there are several collaborators who come there and look for solutions or look for discussions or look for tools or bring ideas or bring challenges there. So this is one of the areas that, it's working quite well because we have this collaboration with the academia, with Northumbria University in particular. The next thing that we have done recently is to sign a new memorandum of understanding between the university and the IFRC. This is to promote, further promote our research and our learning, because if we want to go further and do more, we have to do it under an umbrella of a memorandum of understanding. We have this memorandum of understanding for the next 5 years, but as I had said previously, we've been working over a decade now. And so, yeah, it's 5 years, but it's just, a number. And so this MOU would also help to strengthen the capacity in volunteering research and practice throughout all our 191 national societies, because this will help the national societies as an agreement or a stepping stool for them to work within the countries and with other parties and with the governments. So this is one of the areas where we are strengthening our collaboration in terms of research on volunteering. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joyce. And on that note, and we know that there have been a lot of sessions happening and many of you are joining the RC3 event across different time zones, but we wanted to leave enough time, and we have just about 15 minutes before we need to close the session so that the next event can start. But we wanted to open this time for a moment of discussion and informal conversation, because we really do appreciate the opportunity of having here in the room. We could see in the chat colleagues joining from many different contexts. So if you have any questions for Joyce, myself, that we can explore from what we have discussed here during the session, but also we have a few questions for you too. So we really would appreciate to have an opportunity to hear from you. If you have been involved in any type of research work yourselves connected to this topic of volunteer development in particular, or more widely too, and how, if you have, how have you been collaborating collaborating across sectors and what types of challenges you might be facing in these collaborations, and particularly how these partnerships might be adding value to your work. So to open the discussion, I am going to stop sharing for a minute so we can see everyone a little bit better, and we'll pop the questions here in the chat, but we just wanted to give you a chance if anybody wants to raise their hand to speak on the mic or to put any comments or questions here in the chat, then we can use this time for a little bit of a discussion moment. Oh, thank you. I can see a comment here in the chat. Sustaining volunteers is challenging, especially when our teammates get injured during duty. It makes the young generation to sit back. How can we tackle this? And second, the recent security aspect when Red Cross volunteers are on duty, either peace or conflict time. I think this is a really relevant question. Thank you for raising the importance of the safety, security, and well-being again. And we know that particularly in the context of conflicts, when volunteers are exposed to danger, this is extremely relevant. So what we have been trying to do in practical terms, as Joyce also mentioned, through the online community of practice now, but through many other activities that are organized. For example, many of you might have attended or have seen resources from the international conference that happened last October, is to promote opportunities for people to engage with the standards. We believe that the key 13 standards that have been developed to focus on safety, security, and well-being, they are really trying to improve the mechanisms that exist to protect volunteers. And we know that this is an ongoing effort. It's not going to be a one-off activity and then it's done. It's an everyday effort to be able to promote the safety, security, and well-being, but we need to start listening to volunteers in the first place and understanding where the mechanisms are in our own context, be it a national society, another organization, to be able to promote their protection. So first of all is the importance of awareness and information about what can be done and what are the mechanisms and the tools that exist to support that within and also beyond the movement. So I think this is like a really important topic. I don't know if you'd like to open the mic to share a comment or any other yeah.
I just wanted to mention that I've put in the comment about the IFRC Stay Safe. Also, the Stay Safe that is done by our security team, which is also very important for national societies, at least for their volunteers. I know in the Federation, it's a mandatory course. And so national societies should also make it mandatory. And it is something that they have revised it. I think it was just this year, there's a new training out, which has revised what has been put in there, depending on what is going on right now. So it is a very updated training course, which is very useful for staff and for volunteers also. So that's also quite important.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Joyce. I've just added this link as well to the chat as another really useful resource, again, available in many different languages and allowing everyone to be, again, accessing relevant guidance and information about safety and security and well-being as well. So if there are any other comments or quick questions tackling the points that we have raised in the chat, we have just about 5 minutes. But if not, what I would just suggest that we do as well, and feel free to keep asking questions in the chat if you have any comments or aspects to highlight, is just to give you a few minutes to be able to also scan this QR code if you are able to give us some feedback about the session before you log off today's session. We know that everyone is extremely busy and following different sessions. So before you log off, if you're able to give us this important feedback, and there is also the link that Joyce is popping into the chat now, it would be really appreciated. The organizers really do use this feedback to improve the way that the sessions are organized the following year. So that's an opportunity for active feedback there, if you can find the session number 6, which is the current session. I can see another question in the chat here from Kirsten. Thank you so much. How did the academic partnership come about, and what did each partner bring? I think that's a really important question as well. Thank you, Kirsten, for raising it. And this partnership came about precisely back in the day around 2013, when there was a common interest from the IFRC and Northumbria University, so particularly the authors of the Global Review on volunteering that we have shared at the start of the presentation, Professor Matt Bailey-Smith and Sean Hazeldine from the IFRC, to be able to collaborate and to get in touch to see how these opportunity of reviewing the needs and the aspects that are connected to volunteer development could lead to a collaboration. So this has always been a very open partnership from the start, from identifying together the needs, and what I would say that each partner brings is precisely this experience from different sectors. So we started talking about this value of the cross-sectoral collaboration here for the session, right? So from the academic perspective, Northumbria University has been emphasizing the processes, the activities, and how to conduct research in ethical and focused in ethical ways, focused on integrity and listening to volunteers in the first place, while like the IFRC particularly has this wonderful experience and the hands-on opportunity of really understanding how volunteers are working in the day-to-day in the national societies and how they are supporting and accessing the volunteer database and the staff network to be able to mobilize everyone and have this opportunity of coming together to get a better understanding of the needs and the potential changes that can be made through a more consistent gathering of evidence and information. So I think it's the value of coming together to improve how volunteering is undertaken, and also what are the challenges and the needs that can be identified for the future, and doing that in a very horizontal and collaborative way. So I think those would be some highlights from my side. I don't know, Joyce, if you'd like to add any comments as well.
Yes, thanks, Bianca. Yeah, actually, exactly what you just said. There was that need because there was also the changing trends. And IFRC wanted to undertake this whole review on, volunteering trends, because for years, the main thing that every national society said was, we are losing volunteers. We are losing volunteers. So we wanted to know what was the main issue. There was also we were saying that, we have 19 million volunteers around the world. We have 19 million volunteers. We have 20 million. I think there was a time that we used to talk about 100 million volunteers. And also the data that we had, we realized that most of the data was not like real-time data. It was, sometimes we realized that it was data that was just recopied and not real counting. So this global review was much needed. And that was when Federation and Northumbria started this collaboration. And that review was, let me say, revolutionary. And it was through this review that so many things in terms of volunteering changed. That is why even the volunteering policy doesn't talk about what we are talking about right now, is that, we used to say that volunteers of the IFRC, as if we owned the volunteers. But we realize that we don't own the volunteers. Volunteers want to volunteer in their free time, want to volunteer the way they want to volunteer, not we keeping them. And then sometimes we have these volunteers, we keep them, we don't even know what to do with them. If there was no program or there was no crisis or there was no exercise. So this review really, I mean, I think if anybody has time, even though it was done 10 years ago, it's still very valid today. And because of this review, we have revised the policy. We have come up with so many different tools that is more relevant for the world that we live in today, that the trends that are going on today. So yes, this is how the whole collaboration with Northumbria started, and it's going so well that we don't want to let go of Northumbria. So we have signed this MOU, and we are looking forward to doing more with them in terms of partnership. Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. From our side as well, we think the value of this partnership is unique because it really makes research be applied to the real world challenges of volunteers. No, we're not just talking about words or numbers, we're talking about real people and how we can actually gather information that is relevant, and it's not going to just sit in books or in libraries, which of course are important, but we know that in this sector in particular, we really need information that can be actionable, that can be used by practitioners and improve the ways that volunteer management happens everywhere. So I believe that we're just about trying to finish this session. Thank you very much, Kirsten, for your question and participation. Again, just a final invitation. If you do have a moment, it's 2 minutes only, not more than that. It's a very short feedback form. The link is also again posted in the chat, and would be really grateful if you could share your feedback before leaving the Zoom today. And at this point, I think it leaves us to just say many thanks to everyone for joining, for making the time. I know you're joining from across different time zones, so it's a real pleasure to have this opportunity to share. And thank you for your engagement and participation from my side. Joyce, over to you.
Thank you very much for taking the time to join this session. We very much appreciate that you took the time out to listen to this collaboration. And we're looking forward to seeing you also joining the community of practice if you haven't done so yet, and promote it within your national societies or within your organizations so that we have a richer discussions on the platform. Thank you so very much. Thank you.
Thank you all.